I wanted to make some cute bookmarks without buying new supplies, so I pulled out my scrap fabric, turned on my sewing machine, and made 3 different types of bookmarks. Some turned out great, some did not. So let's jump in. So we're going to make 3 different types of bookmarks, and each bookmark requires a piece of interfacing on the inside if you have it. You can use iron-on interfacing if you have that, or you can use the sew-in type, which is what I have. And we're going to be making the bookmarks kind of random odds and ends sizes because that's what I have. But realistically, you want your bookmark to be about 2.5 inches wide and about 6 inches long for the fabric that you're using. You can use a little bit more or less depending on how much scrap fabric you have. So we're going to be making one bookmark with just simple 2 different colors on it. We're going to be making another bookmark, which I'm using a bunch of scrap pieces that I have, and I've got a little segment here in the video that shows you how I made this fabric here, and that's going to be another bookmark. And then we're going to make a third, and for these 2 bookmarks, we want the interfacing to be about the same size or larger than the actual bookmark pieces that we are going to be using. And the third bookmark that we're going to be making is going to be really simple and it's going to be super cute, but the interfacing on this one, I'll show you on the back, is going to be smaller than the inside of the bookmark just because of the way that the final touches are going to be. And again, this is sew-in interfacing, not iron-on. So, but if you have iron-on interfacing, what you would want to do is make sure that the interfacing kind of sits in this fashion inside of your fabric so that you have a clean edge all the way around to sew on. That's not sewing through the interfacing. For the first bookmark that we're going to be sewing, all we're going to do is have our design side facing inwards so that it's like they are kissing, kind of like the image there shows. And then the interfacing is going to go onto the back. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew all the way around the edge of this, and we're going to leave about an inch to a 2-inch gap here to flip our bookmark inside out. You can use clips or pins to hold this together. Now this bookmark is going to have a tassel attached to it, and I'm going to put the tassel end through this top portion of the bookmark, and you want to make sure that the tassel gets sewn over a few times when you're putting it through the sewing machine. And I'm going to clip this together with my pin here, with my clip, so it holds. Now this tassel is very big, so I'm not going to keep it inside of the bookmark. I'm just going to leave it off to the side here because I'm going to leave this side open so that I can flip the bookmark around. And I'm just going to pin this here closed so that the tassel fabric doesn't come through. So now that this bookmark has been pre-sewn, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the edges off the corners here so that it's easy to flip, and we're going to trim any surplus fabric that we have, and we're going to then flip this inside out. Now you want to make sure that you're trimming the corners on an angle so that they're easy to flip later. Now I've used high contrasting thread so that you can see my sewing, but you might want to use a thread that matches your design better so that if anything pulls later on, you can very easily not see it. I'm going to work around the tassel last because I worry that if I do it too quickly, it might mess everything up. So on this front part here, you want to be careful not to cut this tassel end a bit. You can cut it. I mean, it's not going to make a huge difference. It's not going to impact the way that the tassel stays in, but you have extra here. So if it starts to pull out and there's fabric there for it to stop coming out as far, then that will be helpful. Now on this portion here, I'm going to hold the tassel off to the side so that it doesn't get cut by accident, because that's the actually important part of the tassel that we do need. Now that this has been trimmed, we're going to simply flip this inside out, or right side out. Now we want to pull the fabric out and leave the interfacing on the inside, so we're just going to flip this through. And pulling the tassel will help you a little bit if you have sewn it in properly. Now once the bookmark has been popped out mostly, you're going to need a poking tool or a pen or chopsticks or a stick or whatever you have. I typically use a pencil. I'm just going to push it in through here and make sure that all my corners get popped out nicely to give my bookmark more shape. Now I have my bookmark partially done. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually iron this. I'm going to make sure that these edges are folded in straight so that I can have a nice folded edge in here so this seam disappears on me when it's folded through. I'm going to quickly iron this so that it is nice and flat. And then I'm going to put a nice edge around it so that it stays flat. Now you can use a thread that matches or that accents this. so that it shows up. I think I'm going to do just the colors that I've got in my machine, so it's going to be black on the back and white on the front. And this is bookmark number 1, all finished. We've got a nice seam around the edges and we have a tassel on it. If you want to learn how to make tassels like this instead of buying them, I've left a link here for you to watch a different video where I teach you how to make tassels. So be sure to check that out as well. And now this bookmark is ready to go into a book. I have all of these leftover pieces of fabric that I used from a previous project. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of arrange them in a, I don't know, maybe like an alternating pattern like this or something. And then just sew them together. So I'm going to sew back to front so that I can have a nice long piece. And then the back of my bookmark is going to have, or the front of my bookmark is going to be sort of an alternating color. I think I'm going to go dark blue roses, and I'm just going to do these 5 pieces together and leave these other pieces for something different. So all I've done is just sewn these little swatches together, and I've sewn them and ironed it down so that all the seams are going in the same direction. And now I'm going to use this as the one side of my bookmark. Now that I have my fabric ready, it's time to put bookmark 2 together. All I'll be doing is placing the design side facing inwards for both of the bookmark pieces, like so, and any surplus will be cut off after I'm done sewing, and I'm going to put my interfacing on top, and this is going to be on the outside of them. So remember, the 2 nice faces are facing each other, and then the interfacing goes on top. And I'm just going to hold this together with my clips. Now for this bookmark, again, we're going to be sewing around 3 sides, and we're going to leave a gap of about 2 inches or 1.5 inches here to allow us access to flip this. I'm going to put 2 pins here so that I know where they are to kind of leave myself a gap and not go through. So I'm just going to sew all the way around this one. Now that the second bookmark is done, I'm going to remove my pins that I left to mark this, and this bookmark doesn't have a tassel, so I don't need to worry about that, but I'm going to cut around the edges on this one again and making sure to trim my corners nicely, but not through the thread, so that it's easy to flip the corners. And now again, we're going to flip this. We're going to make sure that we're flipping between the fabrics and not between the fabric and the interfacing. Oh, this is coming undone. Something to note when you're doing this sort of design, mine came apart during the flipping process, so I have to go back and re-sew these bits together. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're flipping this, so that you have to make sure you double stitch at the back here so that it stays in place together. So I re-sewed those edges, and then I'm going to flip this over now so that I can have the bookmark right side out. If you've ever tried crafting that did not go how Pinterest promised, you're in the right place. Be sure to hit subscribe so that you can see more videos like this. Once we're done flipping this around, we're going to make sure that we have our little bits here, the surplus fabric that we left at the opening. We're going to fold it inwards, and we're going to iron this whole thing down so that it closes nicely. Now this one's going to require a little bit of massaging to make sure that it all stays nicely closed, but we're going to do a quick iron before we do a sew on this. So we're going to quickly iron this flat, and then once we're done, we're going to sew a seam around the whole outside of this bookmark so that it stays nicely flat together. And there you have it. This bookmark is complete as well. It didn't turn out perfectly because of the way that I had to re-sew the lines here with these scrap pieces of fabric, but it's still pretty good, and it can still be used as a bookmark. I don't know if I would recommend this method. I would probably try to troubleshoot this a little bit more so that I could get these bits to stay better when I was sewing this, but it can still be used as a bookmark, and I'm pretty sure it'll get lost in my house with all the other bookmarks that we have. For the third bookmark, what I will be doing is I'm going to place my design side facing out. I'm going to place my interfacing on top. Oops, not stick it to my fingers. And then I'm going to place the top design portion on top again. And now with this, I'm going to pin this together so that it holds tight. And we're just going to sew around the edges all the way around on this one. And for this one, I think we're going to add in a simple ribbon to add in as a tassel for this. I'm just going to use some blue ribbon. And before I put this into my sewing machine, I want to quickly burn these edges so that they don't fray later on me. And now I'm going to just put this into the top of my bookmark here, and I'm going to pin this into place. Now when we're sewing this bookmark, we want to sew about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch in so that we are catching this interfacing just at the edge of it when we're sewing. And we're going to sew over the tassel or the ribbon here a few times so that it can stay nicely in place and it doesn't fall out over time. What we're going to do is we are going to remove our pins and we're going to grab some pinking shears. Or if you have scissors that have fancy edges, you can use those as well. I'm just going to grab some pinking shears and we're going to cut the edge of this and line up our cuts so that it has a nice edge to it. And I used a high contrast thread so that it would show up nicely in the final design, but you can use one that is not high contrast. Now for this portion here, we don't want to cut through the ribbon, so we need to be very careful when we're cutting not to cut too far through, but so that we can continue to cut this one piece at a time. I'm going to pull this back and I'm going to grab the back part of this now as well. And now my cut lines up. And I'm going to cut this portion here as well. If you're learning new random skills with me, especially the messy kind, hit subscribe. We'll figure this out together. And this is bookmark number 3 completed. My lines didn't turn out the greatest at the back, but you can't really notice that with the straight edges of the cut from the pinking scissors. So this bookmark is ready to be used in a book as well. So now we have the 3 bookmarks done. We have the simple one with just 2 different fabrics and a nice tassel. This one here where I used the scrap fabric to make a different design didn't turn out the greatest just because the fabric was pulling at the edges when I sewed it started to flip it. So it didn't turn out the greatest, but it still looks pretty cute. And then I had this really basic one with just a ribbon tassel, and that's cut with some pinking shears to make it look like a nice quick bookmark. And so those are 3 different ways of making the bookmarks. All right, there you have it. Fabric bookmark experiment number 1 is in the books. Did they turn out perfectly? No. Did we learn something? Absolutely. And honestly, that's kind of the purpose of this channel, so that we can learn to craft together, even if it's slightly chaotic. If you like learning crafts along with me, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and then I'll see you in the next video. Happy crafting!